Jimmy's question hung in the air. Keanu Reeves stood up from his chair. And he walked toward the corner of the stage because the photograph hanging there was one he'd been searching for 20 years. It was a Tuesday night in October 2024. The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. Studio 6A at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. The audience was buzzing with excitement because Keanu Reeves was the guest. Beloved, mysterious Keanu, promoting his latest film, sitting in the guest chair with that characteristic humility that made millions love him. Jimmy was in his element. The interview was going perfectly. Laughter. Stories about motorcycles and movie stunts. The Roots playing subtle background fills. Questlove grinning behind his kit. Everything was smooth, professional, exactly what a Tuesday night talk show should be. Jimmy leaned forward with his blue note cards. So Keanu, I heard you did all your own stunts again in this one. He never finished the sentence. Keanu's eyes had drifted past Jimmy, past the cameras, toward the back corner of the stage where the production design team had decorated with vintage movie posters and old Hollywood memorabilia. His face changed. Color drained. His mouth opened slightly. He stood up. Not the polite standing of someone excusing themselves. Not the casual rising to make a point. This was abrupt. Urgent. The kind of movement that comes from seeing something impossible. Jimmy stopped mid-sentence, his note cards frozen in his hand. Keanu? Keanu didn't respond. He was already walking past the guest chair, past Jimmy's desk, toward that corner of the stage. His arm raised, pointing at something on the wall. The audience fell into confused silence. The Roots stopped playing. Questlove's drumsticks hovered motionless. The cameras scrambled to follow Keanu's movement. Jimmy stood up behind his desk, completely lost. Is everything okay? Did someone put something up there that photograph? Keanu's voice cut through the studio, rough with emotion. Where did you get that photograph? Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. The control room erupted. Director Dave Diamadi was shouting into his headset. What's happening? What photograph? Did we mess up the set design? Why did Keanu leave his seat? Producer Gerard Bradford stood behind Dave, staring at the monitors. I don't know. Keep rolling. Don't cut. Something's happening. On stage, Keanu had reached the corner. His hand was touching a small framed photograph that the art department had hung as part of the vintage Hollywood decor, one of dozens scattered around the set, meaningless background pieces meant to add atmosphere. Except this one wasn't meaningless. Not to Keanu Reeves. Jimmy walked out from behind his desk, approaching Keanu carefully. I don't know. The art department decorates the set. Do you know that picture? Keanu carefully lifted the frame off its hook. His hands were shaking. When he turned around, tears were streaming down his face. The audience gasped. 300 people watching Keanu Reeves, famously private, famously composed, crying on live television. This is... Keanu's voice broke. He looked down at the photograph, then up at Jimmy, then out at the audience. This is my sister Kim. And my best friend River. From 1993. I've been looking for this photograph for 20 years. The studio went silent. The kind of silence that happens when something real breaks through the machinery of television. Jimmy's expression shifted from confusion to concern. Keanu, I don't understand. How? Can we? Keanu looked at the cameras, then back at Jimmy. Can we stop for a second? I need to explain something. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Jimmy looked at the cameras. At the control room. At the audience. He made a choice. Yes, he said simply. Of course we can stop. He turned to face camera one. Folks, something unexpected just happened. Keanu found a photograph on our set that means something to him. And I think we need to hear about it. Jimmy gestured to the guest chairs. Keanu, sit. Take your time. Tell us. Keanu returned to the guest chair, still clutching the framed photograph. Jimmy sat across from him, not behind his desk but in the second guest chair, closer, more intimate. The note cards were forgotten. The planned interview abandoned. This was something else now. I'm sorry, Keanu said, wiping his eyes with his free hand. This must seem crazy. It's not crazy, Jimmy said gently. Just talk to us. Keanu looked down at the photograph. The frame was dusty, clearly a thrift store find that the art department had grabbed for set decoration without knowing its history. The image showed 3 young people, 2 men and a woman, sitting on the hood of a beat-up car, smiling at whoever was taking the picture. Late summer. Golden hour light. The kind of photo that captures a moment of pure, unself-conscious happiness. This is from August 1993. Keanu began, his voice steadier now. That's me. That's my sister Kim. And that's River Phoenix. The audience recognized the name immediately. River Phoenix, the brilliant young actor who had died of an overdose outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles on Halloween night, 1993. Just weeks after this photograph was taken. We were in Northern California. Keanu continued. River was filming a movie nearby. Kim was visiting me. We had one day off together, and we drove up the coast. Found this little beach town. Bought sandwiches from a gas station. Sat on the hood of my car and talked for hours. He touched the glass of the frame. A woman walking by offered to take our picture. Just one shot. River had his camera with him. He was always carrying cameras. But he gave it to her, and she took this. Just one frame. River said he'd get it developed, and send me a copy. Keanu's voice cracked again. He died 6 weeks later. And I never saw this photograph. I didn't even remember the woman taking it. After River died, everything from that summer became a blur. Kim and I talked about that day sometimes, but we never had proof it happened. No picture. Just memory. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Jimmy was leaning forward, his own eyes wet. The audience was completely silent, 300 people bearing witness to grief that had waited 31 years to surface. How did it end up here? Keanu asked, looking at the photograph like it might disappear if he stopped touching it. On your set? In this frame? Jimmy turned to the control room. Can someone get the art department up here? Now? 2 minutes later, the show still rolling, the audience still silent, a young woman appeared from backstage. She looked terrified, clearly thinking she'd made some catastrophic mistake. Hi, I'm Sarah, she said nervously. I'm the set decorator. Did I do something wrong? The photograph, Jimmy said gently, pointing to the frame Keanu was holding. Where did you find it? Sarah approached cautiously. That one? I got it at an estate sale in Pasadena 3 weeks ago. They were selling boxes of old photos and frames. I bought a bunch for set decoration. We use them all the time for background atmosphere. I had no idea it was. Is it someone famous? Where in Pasadena? Keanu asked. What address? Sarah pulled out her phone, checking her notes. 1247 North Lake Avenue. It was listed as the estate of... She scrolled. Margaret Chin. The family was selling everything. She passed away in June. Keanu's eyes widened. Margaret Chin. That was her name? The woman who took the picture? I don't know, Sarah said. That's just who owned the house. Keanu stood up again, still holding the photograph. He looked at Jimmy with an expression of wonder and disbelief. River used to talk about wanting to be a photographer when he got older. He said he wanted to capture real moments. Not posed shots. Just life. He turned the frame over. On the back, written in faded ink, was a note. 3 beautiful souls. Malibu Canyon Road. August 17, 1993. Developed September 2, 1993. May this memory last forever. MC. She developed it. Keanu whispered. After River died. She developed our picture and she kept it. For 31 years. The audience was crying now. Jimmy was crying. Even Questlove had tears streaming down his face behind his drums. Jimmy spoke quietly. Keanu, I think Margaret Chan wanted this to find you. Maybe not this way. Maybe not on a talk show set. But somehow, it found you. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming. Keanu looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then he carefully set it down on the table between them. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he extracted a small, worn piece of paper, folded many times, edges frayed. River gave this to me the night before he died, Keanu said, unfolding it carefully. We had dinner together. He was struggling with some things. I was worried about him. We talked for hours. At the end of the night, he wrote this and handed it to me. He held up the paper. In messy handwriting it read, "The best photographs are the ones we don't know we're in. The best memories are the ones we don't try to create. Thank you for being real. R." Keanu's voice was barely a whisper. I've carried this for 31 years. And I never understood it. River was always philosophical like that. Saying things that sounded profound but I couldn't quite grasp. But now... He picked up the photograph again. Looked at the three young people on the hood of that car, captured by a stranger who developed their picture after one of them died and kept it safe for 3 decades. Now I understand, Keanu said. This is the photograph we didn't know we were in. The memory we didn't try to create. This is what River meant. This is us being real. Jimmy stood up. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a simple frame, empty, clear glass. He brought it back to Keanu. I want you to have this, Jimmy said. It's from my first night hosting this show. I was so nervous I kept it as a reminder of where I started. But I think Margaret Chen's photograph deserves something better than a thrift store frame. He carefully removed the photograph from its dusty frame and placed it in the new one. Take this with you. Put it somewhere you'll see it every day. And remember that day on the coast with your sister and your friend. Keanu accepted the frame with trembling hands. He pulled Jimmy into a hug, sudden, fierce, grateful. The audience erupted into applause. Not the performative applause of entertainment, but the cathartic applause of people who had witnessed something sacred. When they separated, Keanu turned to face the audience. Thank you for giving me space to... He couldn't finish. The words weren't there. But they didn't need to be. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The interview never resumed. Jimmy and Keanu just sat and talked, about River, about loss, about how sometimes the universe returns things we thought were gone forever. The planned segments were scrapped. The movie promotion forgotten. For 30 minutes, The Tonight Show became something else, a space for grief and memory and impossible coincidence. After the taping, Keanu asked Sarah from the art department if there were any other photographs from Margaret Chen's estate sale. There weren't. But he got her address. The next week, Keanu went to Pasadena and found Margaret Chen's daughter. She told him that her mother had been a photographer's assistant in Los Angeles in the 1990s. She'd developed thousands of rolls of film for actors and directors. She'd always said that photographs were sacred. That they captured moments that people would need later, even if they didn't know it yet. After River Phoenix died, Margaret had developed his final roll of film. This photograph had been on it. She'd kept it safe for 31 years, believing it would find its way home. Keanu donated the old thrift store frame to the Museum of Moving Images with a plaque that reads, "Sometimes what we've lost is just waiting to be found." The new frame Jimmy gave him sits on Keanu's mantle. Every morning, he sees 3 young people on a car hood, captured in a moment they didn't know mattered. Kim calls him when she needs to remember that day. They talk about River. About sunshine. About how grief can wait 30 years and still feel brand new. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Jimmy Fallon keeps a copy of River's note in his desk now. On hard days, he reads it. The best memories are the ones we don't try to create. That night changed how Jimmy does interviews. He learned that sometimes the best television happens when you stop performing and just let people be human. Margaret Chen's daughter sent Keanu the rest of her mother's archive. There were no other photos of River. Just that one. The last one. The perfect one.